know what they say about the diamond business? The most valuable stones aren't the flawless ones. They're the ones with character. But the market doesn't see it that way.
Good evening, and welcome to The Friction Point. I'm Abby, broadcasting tonight from the legendary Iridium Jazz Club, here in New York City's Diamond District, a venue that's been showcasing authentic voices since 1994. Tonight, we're diving into something I'm calling the institutional polishing of the soul. The story of how high-stakes machines take raw, authentic leaders and grind them down until they're perfectly clear, perfectly smooth, and perfectly hollow. With me tonight, Luna, a historical scholar who uses lessons from the past to understand today's challenges. Maya, a community advocate focused on people-first policies. Eris, a strategist who believes every problem has a data-driven solution. Cypher, an independent analyst who questions official narratives. And Sam, a political philosopher who scrutinizes the ethical first principles of institutions. All right, with the stage set, let's move to our opening arguments. This is where you each build your case and state the core facts from your perspective. Sam, let's start with you.
The fundamental question is whether we're witnessing quality control or quality destruction. Political parties claim they're refining candidates, but what they're actually doing is systematically removing everything that made those people worth following in the first place. It's not polish, it's erasure.
Oh, Sam, that's incredibly naive about how politics actually works. You can't govern with pure conviction alone. The system demands compromise, and compromise requires...
Requires what, exactly? Surrendering your core principles at the door?
It requires understanding that perfect is the enemy of good. A leader who refuses to adapt their message, who won't work within the system, can't deliver for the people who elected them.
Maya's touching on something measurable here. We have decades of data on legislative effectiveness. The most successful lawmakers are those who understand coalition building, not the ones who maintain ideological purity. The system works through negotiation, not through individual brilliance.
That's exactly the narrative they want you to believe, Eris. What you're calling effectiveness is just successful domestication. Look at the patterns. Every candidate who enters the system with genuine fire gets the same treatment. First comes the media training, then the consultant class, then the donor meetings. By the time they're effective, they're indistinguishable from every other manufactured product.
Cypher's not wrong about the pattern, but he's missing the historical context. This tension between authentic leadership and institutional demands isn't new. Look at Franklin Roosevelt. He came from the establishment, but he still managed to maintain his conviction while working within the system.
Roosevelt is your counterexample? The man who literally created the modern administrative state? He didn't work within the system. He fundamentally rebuilt it to serve his vision.
Which proves my point. Real leaders find ways to use the system without being consumed by it.
But that's survivorship bias, Luna. For every Roosevelt, there are hundreds of authentic voices who got crushed because they couldn't or wouldn't adapt. The system has evolutionary pressure toward standardization because standardization works.
And honestly, maybe that's not entirely bad. When I'm working with communities that need immediate help, housing, healthcare, education, I don't care if their representative has been polished by the party. I care if they can deliver results.
Results for whom, Maya? Because the results I'm seeing suggest that this polishing process primarily serves the interests of the people doing the polishing.
That's the core deception. They frame institutional conformity as practical necessity, but it's actually about control. The party doesn't want leaders, it wants employees.
But you're all talking as if authenticity and effectiveness are opposites. History is full of leaders who maintained their essential character while still building the coalitions they needed to govern.
Name 3 from the last 20 years.
Well, that's not exactly.
See, that's the problem with this whole conversation. You're romanticizing some golden age of authentic leadership that probably never existed.
Okay, the foundational arguments are on the table. We have Sam and Cypher arguing that institutional polish is systematic destruction of authentic leadership, while Maya and Eris contend that adaptation and compromise are necessary for effective governance. Luna's trying to find historical precedent for having both. Compelling points on both sides. Let's see how those arguments hold up under pressure. This is the friction point. Maya, I want to lock in on something you said. You're framing this as practical necessity, but Sam just called it systematic domestication. I need you to respond directly to that framing. Are you actually defending the destruction of authentic leadership because it's inconvenient?
That's not what Look, I've seen what happens when ideologically pure candidates win elections and then discover they can't pass a single piece of legislation because they refuse to work with anyone. Their constituents suffer, while they maintain their authenticity.
So your solution is preemptive capitulation? Strip away everything meaningful about a candidate before they even get to office?
My solution is realistic preparation for the job they're actually going to do.
Realistic according to whom? The consultant class that profits from this process?
According to the basic math of legislative votes, Cypher, you need coalitions to pass laws.
Maya's right about the mechanics, but I think she's missing the broader efficiency question. The current system produces leaders who are optimized for fundraising and media management, not for actual governance.
Then what's your alternative? Just throw authentic candidates into the machine unprepared and hope for the best.
The alternative is to stop treating leadership as a technical skill that can be taught by consultants. Some qualities can't be manufactured. Conviction, moral clarity, the ability to inspire.
But Sam, those same qualities can make leaders inflexible and unable to govern diverse constituencies.
Or they can make leaders worth following in the first place. Luna, you study history. When did we decide that inspiration was a liability?
When we realized that inspiration without institutional knowledge leads to disaster. Look at the...
No, look at the pattern Luna's actually describing. Every time someone with genuine conviction enters the system, the first thing that happens is they get assigned a handler whose job is to sand down their edges.
Because rough edges cause problems, Cypher, in complex systems.
In complex systems, diversity is strength. Homogenization is death. But that's exactly what this process produces. A generation of leaders who are technically competent and spiritually vacant.
That is such elitist bullshit. You're talking about spiritual vacancy, while I'm talking about getting people healthcare.
And what happens when your technically competent leader faces a crisis that can't be solved with process and procedure? What happens when they need to ask people to sacrifice for something greater than their immediate self-interest?
They use the skills they've developed through years of coalition building and relationship.
They give a focus group tested speech that inspires nobody, because there's no one home behind the words.
This is pure romanticism. Leadership effectiveness is measurable. We can track voting records and legislative success rates.
All of which measure compliance with the existing system, not the ability to change it when change is what's needed.
But Cypher, change has to work within democratic institutions, or it's not legitimate change.
Says who? The institutions that benefit from preventing change?
And that concludes a very intense round of direct questioning. We'll leave that there. Let's bring the temperature down and move into the cool down. Sam, Maya, you were at the heart of that fire. I'm going to put you both on the spot. Despite everything, find one foundational principle you actually share on this topic.
I suppose we both want leaders who can actually deliver for the people who elect them. We just disagree about what that requires.
Yeah, I think we both care about effective representation. Sam thinks the system destroys it, I think it enables it. But we're both worried about the same outcome. Leaders who can't serve their constituents.
I appreciate you both doing that. It's important to find the floor after you've hit the ceiling. Eris, you've had a bit more distance from the core of that exchange. From your perspective, can you give us the grand summary of the ground we've covered today?
What we're really debating is whether institutional adaptation strengthens or weakens democratic leadership. Sam and Cypher see the current system as a diamond cutter that destroys natural character in favor of standardized products. Maya argues that this cutting is actually necessary preparation for the complexities of governance. Luna's looking for historical examples of leaders who managed both authenticity and effectiveness. The core tension is whether the qualities that make someone worth electing are compatible with the qualities that make someone effective once elected.
Before we move to our wrap-up, Cypher, a final thought from you?
The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. The question is whether we're comfortable with what it was designed to produce.
Before we sign off, a brief change of pace. For a conversation about institutional polish, this panel has been remarkably unpolished tonight. Maya, you called someone's argument elitist bullshit. I want it on record that I appreciate the candor.
Well, sometimes the institutional filter slips when you're talking about things that actually matter. I'll work on my media training.
The fact that you think you need to work on your media training after giving the most honest response of the evening is exactly the problem we've been discussing.
And the fact that I can't tell if that was an intentional meta-commentary or just Sam being Sam is the most perfect ending possible.
And before we go, Sam, if you would do the honors?
Of course. The Friction Point podcast is an independent production. Views expressed are those of the personas and are intended to represent the full range of perspectives on complex issues, not the position of any individual, organization, or government. We encourage you to do research and find your own voice on the topics we discuss. We believe an open mind is a healthy mind.
So, what's your take on today's friction point? If this conversation made you uncomfortable, if it challenged your assumptions about what leadership should look like or cost, that's exactly what we hoped for. Don't keep that discomfort to yourself. Share this episode. Start the argument at your own table. Let people know where you stand on the trade-off between authenticity and effectiveness. From all of us here at the Iridium Jazz Club in New York's Diamond District, remember that the most valuable stones aren't always the ones without flaws. Sometimes the inclusions are what make them worth keeping. Let's keep exploring the friction. Good night, everyone.